I want to call this hearing to order. I want to welcome everybody. I appreciate all of that are here, all those that are online. The purpose of this hearing is to hear from the President's nominee to serve as Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Denis R. McDonough. Before I talk about Denis, I just want to say I appreciate this committee for all the reasons that we set on this committee, that it's been bipartisan, it's been non-political, and we've tried to do the best by our veterans, whether you're on the Republican side of the aisle or the Democratic side of the aisle. And I particularly appreciate the relationship I had with the former chairman, Johnny Isaacson, and with my good friend, Jerry Moran. And this is not going to change. We're going to continue to operate this committee in a way that the veterans are number one, and that's just the way it's going to be. And we're going to continue to work together every way possible and communicate together and not surprise one another and move forth with policies that work for this country's veterans. Denis, I appreciate your commitment to public service and your willingness to step forward. If confirmed, you will be tasked with ensuring that our nation's veterans have access to timely care services and the benefits that they've earned and deserve. Today, we are here to determine whether you are right for this job. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with members of this committee over the past few weeks and for your timely responses to the pre-hearing questions sent by many of us. And at this time, I would ask unanimous consent that those questions and responses be made part of the record of this hearing. The transition period between administrations can be a time of turmoil and confusion and can generate uncertainty inside and outside an agency. At VA, there is simply too much at stake to let that happen. The coronavirus pandemic is still raging, with more than 400,000 Americans succumbing to the virus in less than a year. Denis, you will be responsible for ensuring that the VA has everything it needs to treat our veterans and care for the VA employees. VA has tested nearly 1.3 million veterans and employees for COVID-19. The agency is tracking nearly 198,000 cases among veterans, staff, and others admitted to VA for care, including nearly 14,000 active veteran cases. And now there are more than 8,300 veteran families who are without their loved ones, including the more than 3,100 VA has cared for within its facilities. Denis, simply put, your chief responsibility during this unprecedented time will be to save as many lives as possible. That includes advocating within the administration for VA's fair share of vaccines and ensuring timely and efficient deployment of those vaccines. And it includes efforts to ensure frontline workers have everything they need to take care of our sick veterans and protect themselves from coronavirus. How you care for your staff will mean everything. VA recently reported nearly 3,200 VHA staff with active COVID-19. Another 2,300 clinical staff are quarantined and unable to work. Sadly, 118 VA staff have died from this coronavirus. The virus is taking a toll on those VA heroes who care for veterans, and we're entrusting you with their safety. I am pleased the administration has asked Dr. Richard Stone to ensure a smooth, has kept Dr. Richard Stone to ensure a smooth transition for VHA, Veterans Health Administration. But it will be a while before you have a full leadership team in place, so there is a lot riding on your shoulders. One area in need of scrutiny is claims processing. Nearly 500,000 claims are pending, with more than 200,000 considered to be backlogged. While so much focus is on healthcare right now, we must ensure this important issue gets the attention it needs. Additionally, this committee reaffirmed its bipartisan reputation in the last Congress. A number of historic reforms were enacted, from John Scott Hannon Veterans Mental Health Improvement Act, to the Deborah Sampson Act, to the expansion of presumptive coverage for thousands of additional Vietnam veterans exposed to Agent Orange. Implementation of these reforms must be consistent with congressional intent, and it must be swift. Veterans are counting on it. And with the case of Vietnam veterans, they've already been waiting for decades. There are other critical reforms that have been in the works for years and need serious attention. From an expansion of caregiver program that has seen its number of speed bumps, to electronic health record modernization effort that has taken way too long and cost taxpayers way too much, and everything in between. You will certainly have your hands full, but know that this committee is here to help. If you are transparent and respectful of oversight, we can be your biggest proponents and your best partners. During your predecessor's nomination hearing, I told him the sacred mission of serving the veterans and their families must always transcend personal agendas or political affiliations. In the end, I believe he lost sight of that, and I called him out for it. And I will hold you to the same standard. There is a great political divide in this nation, but veterans across the country and the members of this committee are united by a very basic expectation. The next VA Secretary needs to be an individual of honesty, integrity, and vision, who listens to the veterans and puts their well-being above all else. If you keep your head down and live up to that expectation, you will be successful. And in the end, we all want you to succeed because veterans across this country need you to succeed. I look forward to our discussion today. Thank you again for your willingness to serve on behalf of our nation's veterans. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Senator Moran.
Chairman Tester, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the working relationship, your care and concern for veterans, the way this committee has operated during my chairmanship. And I agree with you that that cooperation, bipartisanship should and will continue. You will be the 8th chairman. I have served on the House Veterans Affairs Committee under Chairman Bob Stump, Chairman Chris Smith, Chairman Steve Boyer, Chairman Bob Filner, and in the Senate under Chairwoman Patty Murray, Chairman Bernie Sanders, Chairman Johnny Isaacson, and now you. In all circumstances, I want to be a productive member of this committee and want to work with my colleagues to see that good things happen for all veterans. And I have, in some instances, when we say things like that, we have the sense that we're just talking. And I'm not just talking, and you weren't just talking. We have no option and no desire to do anything other than the way we've operated in the past, and we'll continue to work with you in that way to serve our nation's veterans. And Mr. McDonough, welcome. No mission is more noble than the one you will lead if you are confirmed. And so I thank you and your family for your willingness to re-enter government service. We're going into this new Congress with new leadership and a new administration. The challenges we aim to address on behalf of our veterans will be a mix of those existing and ongoing issues we'll struggle to sort out, alongside new challenges and new opportunities for our country to not only honor our veterans for their service that they provided, but to harness their values and their talents to help them lead again. Mr. McDonough, in 2014, your White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Rob Neighbors, reviewed the nationwide wait time scandal and described the root causes using phrases such as little transparency, corrosive culture, lack of accountability across all grade levels, and significant and chronic system failures. 6 years later, thanks to the collective effort of 3 VA secretaries and thousands of dedicated employees, it is fair to say the VA looks very different now than it did then. Employee engagement is at its highest level in over a decade. The VA ranks 6th out of 17 among large government organizations as the best place to work, a vast improvement in just 4 years. And patient trust in VA healthcare is now over 90%. Your job, if confirmed, will be to solidify and build off those improvements. At the same time, several major modernization programs are underway, with electronic health record modernization, financial business transformation, caregiver expansion, and community care networks, just to name a few. These and other modernization efforts will require billions of dollars per year on top of VA's regular operations just to catch the VA up with the latest and best practices. The VA desperately needs strong leadership to make certain these investments achieve results and they are not wastes of taxpayer dollars. With the help of our VSO partners, Congress has enacted several recent reforms to improve mental health care, protect educational assistance, enhance disability and survivor benefits, and expand burial benefits. The next Secretary of Veterans Affairs must be ready on day one to advance and build on the progress that has been made over the last 4 years, must ensure that the laws are faithfully executed, and must measure results so we know veterans are benefiting as intended. Additionally, the next Secretary must continue to fight against COVID-19 support an already strained workforce, deliver timely vaccinations to VA patients, and be ready to assist civilian healthcare system in places where it is overburdened. Furthermore, backlogs in healthcare and benefit claims appointments that have piled up due to the pandemic, they must be addressed as we return to a more stable operating environment in the coming months. A top concern for me and for, I think, many of my colleagues is how the VA will care for veterans living in rural communities. Before coming to the Senate, I represented a congressional district roughly the size of Illinois with no VA medical center. I look at the VA through the eyes of our Kansas veterans, and the feedback I receive in speaking to them is that health care access has always been a challenge. VA provides excellent health care in its own facilities, but those facilities are not in every community. The Mission Act, the act that you worked on, the Choice Act, and now the Mission Act, gives veterans permanent choice to utilize community health care providers when it makes sense for them and not when it is convenient for VA bureaucrats. I asked President Biden, and will also ask for your commitment to uphold the law by supporting this common sense notion that it is the veteran who should be at the center of their health care decisions. We know that public health measures that reduce the spread of COVID also increase the risk of social isolation and mental health conditions. VA has its tools that it can use to help. Community care authorities, telehealth options, and funding provided by Congress can work together to mitigate the pandemic's impact on veterans' physical, mental, social, and economic well-being. Furthermore, programs like the GI Bill, Veterans Readiness and Employment, and transition assistance programs can help veterans transition out of the military successfully and help launch them on what the VA terms a, quote, solid start. Entering the civilian world shouldn't be the challenge that it is today. Research has shown higher incomes likely lead to better health and outcomes, so investing in these programs doesn't just aid the veteran in his or her transition, but it helps the long-term well-being, and it can reduce the burden on the VA's health system. I would ask you to consider not just how the VA is doing at delivering the benefits provided by law, but also what outcomes we are trying to achieve for veterans with these benefits, and if they are doing enough to measure those outcomes relative to the benefits the VA is providing. Again, Mr. McDonough, congratulations. Thank you for our conversations, both in person and by Zoom. Your commitment to our nation's veterans is seemingly, let me take out the word seemingly, is sincere and real, and I appreciate that very much. Caring for our veterans has always been a unifying force during my time in Congress. It is my great hope that it will continue to be, that continues to be the case if you are confirmed as Secretary. Mr. McDonough, I look forward to hearing your statement and engaging with you further on these questions, this conversation, during the remainder of our hearing, and I thank the Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moran. And before we get to Denis McDonough's statement, we have the incredible pleasure and honor to have our chamber graced by the senior senator from Minnesota, Senator Klobuchar, for an introduction.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Moran, and distinguished members of this committee. Thank you for the good work you do, the bipartisan work you do. That's a hallmark of this committee. And I'm proud today to introduce my friend and fellow Minnesotan, Denis McDonough, as President Biden's nominee for Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Today, Denis is joined by his wonderful wife, Kari, as well as 2 of his 3 kids. Denis grew up in Stillwater, Minnesota, which is on the Wisconsin border, as opposed to our other great border, Senator Rounds, with South Dakota. And he is the grandson of Irish immigrants, the son of devout Catholic parents, and brother to 10 siblings. He attended St. John College in Collegeville, Minnesota, and in addition to graduating summa cum laude, he played safety on the very proud championship St. John's football team. I've been privileged to call Denis a friend for years, and I know he will serve our country so well as the Secretary. As he has done his whole life, he will honor the promises our country has made to our veterans and their families. Denis's commitment to our nation's veterans was clear during his time as President Obama's Chief of Staff, when he made sure that every decision impacting our service members, veterans, and their families was befitting of their sacrifices. Showing respect and gratitude for our nation's veterans is not something he just prioritizes, it's a value for him. He is an adept manager who understands how to tackle complex challenges throughout our government, which will be vital for the next secretary. As we all know, and you have mentioned, Chair and Ranking Member, the VA is facing a number of challenges, from helping veterans to stay safe during the pandemic to improving the quality of care for veterans around the country. And as you also note, great improvements have been made thanks to all of you and many others. These are not simple problems, and these are not simple challenges, and they will require true leadership and vision, which have been, again, the hallmark of Denis's time in public service. I also know he will work with you tirelessly to find bipartisan solutions, which has never been more important as we move our country forward. So much of our work with veterans is about keeping our promises and showing respect, not just in our words, but in our actions. When you get to know Denis, for those of you who are just getting to know him, you will see the qualities of honor and loyalty in his commitment to his family, which also includes his family in Minnesota. I know this firsthand. You see it in how he has treated everyone that he works with. When he worked in the Senate, when he worked as President Obama's chief of staff, you see it in that loyalty, and he puts our country first. During his distinguished career, he's approached each and every job with a spirit of respect, honesty, and collaboration, and a willingness to make himself accessible to his colleagues and to his team. Members of the committee, I know he will do the same with you in this job. He is deeply committed to supporting his workforce. One of the things I want to tell our veterans is I know he will do two things so well. He will listen, and then he will get things done for you. One of my favorite stories about Denis involves this. We were having a lot of trouble in northern Minnesota with mines closing down because of steel dumping from China. And Denis was President Obama's chief of staff, and he went up to northern Minnesota. I think it was very cold, I will add, and met with about 50 people. And it was this long, long table. And Denis sat and listened to every single one of them. And the very last person to speak was a guy named Dan Hill, who's a miner, an iron ore miner. And Dan told the story of how at his son's preschool, when they graduated, the teacher had asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the kids were saying things like an astronaut and a basketball player. And Dan Hill's son said, I want to be a miner. Joe Manchin can relate to this. I want to be a miner like my daddy. And then Dan, the miner, takes this t-shirt, steelworker t-shirt, and he throws it down this long table to Denis, saying the words, make it come true, Mr. McDonough, make it come true. And I'm sitting there next to Denis saying, you were a football star, catch the t-shirt. And he did. And he not only caught the t-shirt, but he put Dan back to work, and he put so many miners back to work because he came back to Washington, helped us pass legislation, and most importantly for this job, implemented things through the bureaucracy of government by getting many different cabinet secretaries and others to hold hearings and the like. I tell that story because I believe in my heart this is the guy you're going to get as Veterans Affairs Secretary who's actually going to follow through and listen and get things done. I'm going to end with the words of a poet who President Biden happens to love, Seamus Heaney, and given Denis's Irish roots, I can't think of a better person to quote at today's hearing. Heaney once wrote, anyone with gumption and a sharp mind will take the measure of two things, what's said and what's done. He will not just say the words as your secretary, he will get things done. I urge the committee to support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Before we get to your statement, Mr. McDonough, I would ask you to rise as I administer the oath. Do you, Denis, raise your right hand, please. Do you, Dennis Richard McDonough, solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before the United States Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? The record reflect that the nominee stated in the affirmative. You have the floor, Dennis.
Today. I do so with great respect for your constitutional obligations to advise and consent, to fund and to oversee the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the bipartisan tradition of this committee in service to our nation's veterans. At a moment when our country must come together, the partnership between the chairman, Senator Moran, and members of this committee is inspiring. If given the honor of serving as Secretary of Veterans Affairs, I will strive to emulate that partnership in my work with you as individual members and as members of the committee. We can meet today in peace and freedom because generations of service members have stepped forward and sacrificed in our name. And though only a small percentage of Americans have served in our armed forces, the President has called on every American to embrace our responsibility to support our veterans and their families. President and Dr. Biden take this duty seriously and personally, as I know each of you do, perhaps especially since they, like so many of you, are members of a proud military family. If confirmed, I will dedicate myself with every fiber of my being to fulfilling what President Biden rightly refers to as our country's most sacred obligation, to prepare and equip our troops that we send into harm's way, and to care for them and their families when they return. It's true that I'm not a veteran, but in my years of public service, I have had the privilege afforded to relatively few Americans. I've seen up close and been deeply moved by the excellence, talents, dedication of our men and women in uniform. When visiting our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen in our bases in Afghanistan and Iraq, I've witnessed the heavy burdens of long deployments away from their families. Beside their hospital beds when they come home, I've seen their resilience in the face of wounds, visible and invisible, that can last a lifetime. Standing there at Dover when our fallen heroes come home one final time, I've seen the unimaginable grief of military families to whom we owe a debt that cannot be repaid and whom we will stand with forever. Inside and outside of government, I've been inspired how our veterans continue to strengthen our communities and our country out of uniform as teachers, coaches, first responders, public servants. Most of all, like every American, I owe a profound debt of gratitude to those who have worn the cloth of our nation. It would be a tremendous honor to serve our veterans and their families, caregivers and survivors by leading the VA, to ensure our nation serves our veterans as well as they have served us. If confirmed, I will make it my mission to fight for our veterans with a relentless focus on three core responsibilities of the department: providing our veterans with timely world-class health care, ensuring our veterans and their families have timely access to their benefits, and honoring our veterans with their final resting place and lasting tributes to their service. At the same time, the President has directed me to focus on getting our veterans through this pandemic, helping our veterans build civilian lives of opportunity with the education and jobs worthy of their skills, talents, and service, ensuring that the VA welcomes all our veterans, including women, veterans of color, and LGBTQ veterans, working to eliminate veterans' homelessness and reducing suicide, and keeping faith with our families and caregivers. In short, if confirmed, I will work tirelessly to build and restore VA's trust as the premier agency for ensuring the well-being of America's veterans. After all, there is no more sacred obligation nor noble undertaking than to uphold our promises to our veterans whether they came home decades ago or days ago. I'm ready for this mission. As a former White House Chief of Staff, I bring a deep, extensive knowledge of government. I understand how to untangle and solve large, complex challenges, both across and within large agencies. I've seen firsthand that when our government is at its best, it can help the American people, including our veterans, and allow them to live in security and dignity. This won't be easy. The Department of Veterans Affairs faces great challenges, challenges made more daunting by the coronavirus pandemic. Its capabilities have not always risen to the needs of our veterans. If confirmed, I promise to fight every single day to ensure that our veterans have the access to world-class, compassionate care that they've earned. I look forward to being a true partner with the men and women of the VA, dedicated, highly skilled professionals, many veterans themselves, veterans serving veterans, who deserve our profound respect and our support. I will also build strong partnerships with the veteran service organizations who devote themselves to their fellow veterans, to their communities, and to our country. I've been given a clear mission by President Biden to be a fierce, staunch advocate for veterans and their families. If confirmed, I will embrace that assignment with the solemnity it demands. This is not a mission I take on alone. Every federal agency has a role in supporting our veterans. If confirmed, I will make that happen. Because again, when it comes to supporting our veterans and their families, every American has a role to play. Chairman Tester, Senator Moran, distinguished members of this committee, thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you today and for the opportunity to join you in caring for our veterans who have served and sacrificed so that we can live in freedom today. May God bless our troops, our veterans, and their families, and as a nation, may we always give them our very best. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you for your statement. Thank you for your statement, Dennis. I appreciate that. Amy, you're welcome to leave if you want, but you can stay to watch the best committee in the Senate work if you'd like.
I think he's in good hands with you.
All right. Well, I'll just start out. Dennis, out of the top jobs in this administration of which you would be well qualified for, why this one?
Mr. Chairman, I'm a fighter and I'm relentless. And I'm particularly relentless about things I have a passion for. And having had the professional experience of the last 20 years, since September 11th, 2001, and having witnessed up close the tremendous service, excellence, and sacrifice of our military and our veterans, I have great passion for making sure that we treat them as well as they've treated us. So when the President called me to talk about this assignment, I could not have been more excited, more humbled, and more committed to seeing it through. And if confirmed, I'll apply that fight and that passion to ensure that we do live up to our promises.
Okay, thank you. Do you have the autonomy to do what you believe is best for this nation's veterans, even when you disagree with the President?
I do. I'd also say I have a very good relationship with the President. He encouraged me to be very candid with him. So in the event that there is a disagreement, I'm confident that I'd have an opportunity to vigorously make my case, draw on the experience and the expertise in the department to bolster that case and to work with you all to fulfill that case.
Many, if not all of us on this committee, believe the importance of the Inspector General, the IGs. If confirmed, will you commit to not interfere or hinder with the independent work of the IG?
Yes, I will so commit.
All right. We have passed a number of bills, and if you're not familiar with them, you can certainly ask. But two of the bills that we passed, and we passed many of them, need a timeline for implementation. The John Scott Hannon Veterans Mental Health Bill that Senator Moran was so gracious to co-sponsor, and the Deborah Sampson Act with Senator Bozeman was so gracious to co-sponsor. Will you agree to provide a timeline for implementation of both those bills? And if so, would you agree to provide regular updates to the committee on the progress of that implementation?
I will absolutely provide an implementation timeline on those bills. I will keep you updated on the progress of that, but more than that, Mr. Chairman, I have discussed these bills at length, both with you, with Senator Moran and Senator Bozeman, and my commitment to you is to not just give you updates, but to consult with you and to work with you in true bipartisan consultative fashion to ensure that we're implementing them, that the department implements them, if confirmed, consistent with the intent of this committee.
Coming into the most senior role at the VA, how are you going to approach reviewing VA's COVID-19 response to date and determining if changes need to be made?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every question that I approach, if confirmed at the department, will be around two questions. Will it give greater access to veterans, and will it ensure better outcomes, as you and Senator Moran both laid out in your opening statements? As it relates to a review on COVID-19, I'll review whether performance to date has been as good as it can be on those two questions for our veterans. The questions are going to be around communication, around access both to vaccines, but then access to care in the case of infections. Similarly, we have to be serious about communicating clearly with the workforce, ensuring that the workforce has access to vaccinations and protection, and the workforce has, as you said in your opening remarks, access to all the material that they'll need to do their job safely.
Numerous reports, oversight reports, have shown that sexual harassment and assault remains a key issue across the department. Creating a self-welcoming environment for all veterans, staff, and guests of the VA is critical. Defense Secretary Austin recently issued a memo to the Pentagon leadership requesting an expedited review of DoD's sexual harassment, assault prevention, and accountability measures. As head of the VA, do you plan on doing something similar?
I do, Chairman. If confirmed on day one, I will lean into this issue to try to set a culture that underscores that such activity will not be tolerated, that the department has to ensure that not only the department's workforce, but also importantly the fastest growing cohort of veterans, namely women veterans, have confidence that they will be treated with respect and given the access that they've earned.
Thank you, Denis McDonough. Senator Moran.
Chairman Tester, thank you. Mr. McDonough, I've been a critic of what I describe as executive overreach. I happen to believe that Article 1 has the ability to give Congress significant and important responsibilities. And administrations over a long period of time have chipped away at that balance that I think would be better if the executive branch was less aggressive and the congressional legislative branch was more aggressive. I've tried to, you were involved in an administration which I criticized for being so aggressive in executive orders, for example. But I always tried to balance that by saying, well, part of the problem is that Congress doesn't do its job. And so it leaves this wide space open for an executive of either party to advance their agenda. And I'd love to see this Congress work better than it does, and I want to try to make certain that I do my part that occurs. But where I would find fault is in the area in which agencies, the executive branch, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and others, when there is clear legislation and clear legislative intent, so both language and intention, that then that language and intention is not followed. In our conversations that you and I have had, I would love for the record for you to confirm your understanding, and let me give you a couple of topics in which that will become important. The President's campaign, President Biden's campaign, and your own response to my pre-hearing questions mentioned rebalancing community care. I'm concerned that these plans may, depending on what those words mean, may erode the core tenets of the Missions Community Care Program, and that would cross a red line for me. Access standards in particular are the cornerstone of the community care program, and veterans have come to rely on those standards over the past 2 years. One of the difficulties we've had is as we move from choice to mission, things changed. Veterans got accustomed to something, and then it was something new. And I take serious issue with any effort to change those access standards or restrict veterans' eligibility for the program. If confirmed, will you uphold the current access standards that veterans, my notes here say universally understand. I wish that was the case, but understand, and do you plan to change those standards as part of that rebalance?
Thank you, Senator Moran. Let me be very clear that community care will continue to be a key part of how the department cares for our veterans. Full stop. I intend to implement the statutes that you all have enacted consistent with your intention, and to do that in consultation with you on any of decisions that come before me. And as it relates to access standards, I will treat those sets of questions in exactly that same way, which is that I will work on those fully in consultation with you.
Let me highlight a reason that I have the concern that I'm expressing to you. One of your responses to my pre-hearing question, you promised to work with Congress, as you just did, to ensure that veterans are the center of their own health care decisions. However, one of the proposed community care updates in the campaign plan would allow the VA to send veterans back to the VA when community providers fail to meet the yet determined access and quality standards. This directly contradicts the mission's intent by enabling the VA to override the veteran's choice. So what I am hoping to hear you say is that you understand that the Mission Act is designed, in fact written, for the veteran and his or her provider at the VA to make a choice about where to receive care based upon what's in the best interest of the veteran. Is there anything there that in your view or the Biden administration's plans that I should have concern about overriding that decision between the VA provider and the veteran?
No, Senator, there is not.
The same theme I would have with the John Hannon Act that Senator Tester and I introduced and got passed through this committee in the Senate and the House and signed by the President. Will you faithfully commit that you will implement the John Hannon Act in that same manner?
Yes, Senator, I will.
If confirmed, will you commit your staff to work with the committee staff and to my staff, to me, to ensure congressional intent is met during each of the phases of implementation for that bill and other legislation?
Yes.
So, Mr. McDonough, one of the complaints that I've had for a long time is that when Congress does act, on the occasions in which we get our act together and succeed in passing legislation, that the VA in particular, but I assume it's true in other departments, the VA in particular seems to ignore the things that we've just talked about. And what I think you're telling me is that I should be less concerned about with you in charge than what I've experienced over the 9 secretaries that have been in office while I've been a member of the Veterans Committee. Is that a fair assessment, that I can trust you to fulfill the role that the executive has in implementing legislation passed by Congress?
Yeah, yes, Senator, and I'd elaborate on that in the following way. One is that I believe, as you do, that, and as I said earlier, everybody has a role to play in supporting the veterans. The Constitution actually divvies that up quite clearly for you all and for the executive in Articles 1 and 2. So it's a constitutional question. Secondly, I also believe it's a question of best outcome. When the executive works closely with Congress in a collaborative and consultative way, that's the best way to ensure more durable policy, more durable outcome, and especially if we're both working with the fundamental premise that every decision should answer, is this getting better access and better outcomes for our veterans?
Mr. McDonough, thank you. Your comments remind me about durability. What that really means is that a veteran can come to expect a certain outcome or a response to a question, and it's not different from one day to the next, 1 week to the next, or one location to the next.
Correct.
And the point I would make is that in so many instances over a long period of time, no particular administration to be specific about, the conversations I have with the secretary or his or her team result in assuring me that this problem is being taken care of and this is our plan. But what I discover when I'm home, that has never been communicated to the people who implement the plan and care for veterans at home in Kansas. And so there is a communication issue related to this. You can assure me that you support implementing with congressional intent, but it has to be told and insisted on by those who actually provide the services to veterans at home. And I would encourage you to make certain that when you tell me and other members of Congress this is the policy at the department, that policy is then known and implemented by those across the country.
Understood.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We are going by seniority order, so next we have Senator Murray remotely.
Donna, delighted to see you today. Welcome, and we all really appreciate your being with us today. You know, the VA is the largest integrated healthcare system in the country, so it really demands some strong, effective leadership. So we appreciate your willingness to take this on. You and I have had a chance to talk about some issues in December, and I wanted to ask you about some of those again today for the record. And let me just start. As part of the Mission Act, Congress expanded eligibility for the Caregivers Program to make sure veterans of all eras suffering from service-connected illnesses would have access to caregiver support. However, under the previous administration, regulations were imposed that limit that eligibility and remove many veterans needing assistance from that caregivers program. Those restricting regulations, like requiring a minimum 70% service-connected disability rating, as well as the need for assistance each time an ADL is performed, unduly restricts eligibility in a way Congress never intended and make it harder for our veterans to get care. So if confirmed, will you take action to roll back those recently imposed restrictions and make it a top priority for VA to fully implement the caregivers law as Congress intended?
Thank you, Senator, and I appreciate the question. I appreciated our discussion of it. My commitment, as I indicated earlier, is to immediately begin to address this issue upon confirmation, to work closely with you and the rest of the members of this committee as it relates to implementation of that act, and to ensure that we do it consistent with the expectation and the intention of Congress.
Thank you very much. Let me turn to another part of our promise to take care of our veterans after they return from duty, which is allowing them to fulfill their dream of having a family. Congress has given the VA authority through appropriations to provide IVF and other necessary fertility treatments for ill or injured veterans and their spouses. But access to that care is far too difficult, and I've been working for nearly a decade to fix this. My bill, which is the Women, Veterans, and Families Healthcare Services Act, will permanently authorize fertility treatment and counseling for veterans and their spouses and provide adoption assistance. Mr. McDonough, it is extremely important that we empower veterans to start families when the time is right for them. Will you commit to work with me to make sure veterans have ease of access to IVF and other fertility treatments?
Senator, I will.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you. One of the largest challenges that is facing the VA is the implementation of the Electronic Health Record Modernization Program. The VA Medical Center in Spokane, my state, has the pilot site for this project. The process has highlighted infrastructure and staffing shortfalls, and veterans in Spokane have experienced unacceptable delays in getting care. Full implementation across every VA medical center is expected to take at least 7 more years. Given that timeline and the scope of this project, if confirmed, how will you protect veterans' access to high-quality care at the VA while ensuring the success of this modernization effort?
Thank you, Senator. As I indicated, every decision that I am involved in, if confirmed as secretary, will come back to the fundamental premise of whether the decision is increasing access and improving outcomes for veterans. This has got to be the case as it relates to the electronic health record as well. And my commitment to you and to members of this committee is to continue to work in a collaborative, consultative fashion with you in the implementation of that program to ensure that at the end of the day, increased access and better outcomes for veterans is the result of that health record, that the workforce understands and can use the health record consistent with those principles, and that I can continue to confirm to this committee that that is the outcome of that process.
Okay, and one final question. Improving the information VA shares with veterans on the GI Bill comparison tool is essential to make sure veterans can get informed choices about their education. I have previously called for DoD and VA to develop a joint policy to counter aggressive recruiting and misleading marketing aimed at our veterans. And I want to see improved availability of crucial information such as levels of student debt and transferability of credits. Can you commit to providing thorough oversight of the GI Bill funds, fully implementing the GI Bill Act, and making sure that when there's evidence of fraudulent conduct, you will take steps to make sure the schools are not allowed to continue to recruit veterans?
Thank you, Senator. The President has indicated to me that a fundamental priority will be, for me, if confirmed, must be ensuring that our vets have access to employment and education opportunities consistent with their experience, skills, and talent. And consistent with that, I would intend to, working collaboratively with you in this committee, ensure that there's appropriate, aggressive oversight and measurement on quality outcomes of that programming.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity.
Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. You've served in a variety of different ways in the executive branch. I know national security, and then also chief of staff to the President Obama, and I've had the opportunity to be around the table with you on many occasions and always found you somebody that was willing to listen and then also very, very informed on whatever issue that we're talking about.
Thank you.
And then very importantly, I know that the President has a great deal of trust in you and respects your opinion. So I think that's good for veterans. So we appreciate your willingness to serve very, very much and look forward to working with you. We had a good conversation not too long ago. I want to follow up on something that really is a significant issue facing veterans in the country. Some of these are too large for any one organization or department to solve. Veteran suicide is one of those enormous issues. Last Congress, we passed a bipartisan bill, the Commander John Scott Hannon bill, to begin to encourage the VA to work more closely with communities in trying to address the issue of veteran suicide. If confirmed, would you describe how you will lead the VA to create more partnerships with veteran-serving community organizations while at the same time incentivizing those same organizations to partner and work with the VA?
Thank you so much, Senator. And there's The crisis facing the country related to veteran suicide is tragic. We face a national crisis on suicide as well. The first and most important thing that I will do if confirmed is underscore that comprehensive health for our veterans includes mental health. It includes effective mental health includes reducing the stigma associated with seeking help, and that also includes increasing access to mental health services through any number of opportunities, and in particular, given the enhanced authorities that you have now made available to the department through community organizations. So using those resources and using the networks that are being built in and around community care gives the department a unique opportunity to ensure that it is drawing on all the available resources on this national crisis.
No, we appreciate that. The VA does a very, very good job and works really hard at this crisis. On the other hand, there are so many entities out in the community that also are doing a very good job and ready and willing. So many of these people fall through the cracks and for one reason aren't in the VA. So if we can get them in a program and then encourage those programs to get them back into the VA, we'll be in good stead. One of the most common things I hear from veterans in Arkansas is regarding the multiple different enrollment processes for VHA, VBA, sometimes NCA, when in fact they are all part of the same agency. So you've got different processes within the same agency. If confirmed, can we work together? Can we work together as a committee and explore a more human-centric design approach, in other words, making it simpler, to help the enrollment process for veterans, more of a one-shop approach?
Absolutely, Senator. I would look forward to the opportunity to work together on that.
Very good. And I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator
Thank
Bozeman. Senator Brown, remotely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you there and call you that. And thanks, Senator Moran, for his gracious comments also. Mr. McDonough, I enjoyed the conversation we had remote, and all the other remote or remotely, whatever is grammatically correct the other day. Thank you. And thanks for your commitment to work with VSOs and VA employees and VA unions like AFGE. So thank you for that. We've seen unprecedented backlog, as you know, in claims processing and compensation and pension exams because the pandemic is affecting operations at National Personnel Records Center. I know you'll be busy on day one working on that and so many other things. When my staff and I met with veterans and VA employees throughout Ohio recently, there have been concerns about VA closing units and downsizing services at one specific facility, especially because of the virus. VA hasn't committed as of yet to reopening the unit once the pandemic's over. My concern with that approach is that VA starts to close units or services or facilities, it will push veterans into the community for care. Some want to do that, others, but most want the option of always going back to the VA. Would you commit to reopening those units or service lines closed due to COVID-19? And will you work with OMB and the White House to make sure that VA has the resources and personnel to reopen those facilities?
Thank you very much, Senator. Obviously, the slowdown in fulfillment of claims processing as a result of the pandemic is a principal concern that I would have if confirmed, and making sure then that we have the resourcing after the pandemic to not fall back into backlog once the department gets its hands around the existing cases would be really important. So I will absolutely take this question of those facilities. I will work with the White House and work with OMB on it to make sure that we have the resources to fulfill a critical assignment of timely access to benefits that veterans and their families have earned.
Okay. Thank you. We've seen far too many veterans and military families targeted by predatory for-profit institutions since passing the post 9/11 GI Bill. Those institutions represent misrepresent themselves and often saddle student veterans with mountains of debt. Do you plan to exercise additional oversight to root out misrepresentation at predatory for-profit institutions that target student veterans?
Every decision that I make, if confirmed as Secretary of the Department, will be asking two simple questions to advance two simple principles, which is, are the decisions we're taking increasing access for veterans, and are they improving outcomes for veterans? Outcomes on education programming and employment programming have to be a critical part of how the department implements that and executes those programs. So the short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. And we know that the Protecting the GI Bill Act's provisions that bans the deceptive recruiting of college third-party lead generators and following the law to cut off the flow of GI benefits to those kinds of schools. Obviously, it's really important. Let me shift. I hope you'll come to Dayton at some point to visit the National VA History Center. I will follow up and talk to you about that. I wanted to talk about veterans homelessness. I'm will soon be the chair of the Banking Housing Committee. Veteran homelessness is an important part of your mission, important part of my mission too there. We've made great progress there, but still have a way to go to complete the job, including making sure that VA has adequate staffing to support the successful HUD VASH housing voucher program. Will you work with Chairman Tester and HUD nominee Marcia Fudge, whom I just spoke to literally 30 minutes ago, and me to make sure all veterans have a place to call home? That's a really high priority.
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Last thing, last month, VA proposed a program that would require military borrowers exiting a COVID-19 mortgage forbearance to pay back their missed payments with interest within 10 years. This is more expensive than what other Fed mortgage programs are offering. It would make it more likely that VA borrowers will fall behind on these new higher monthly payments. Veterans and service members should not be given worse options than other borrowers with federally backed loans. You agree with that?
I do.
Okay. Will you look into the rule and work with us and look into the rule and make sure that no VA homeowner is left with worse options than borrowers in other federally backed loan programs?
I'll be happy to work with you on that.
Okay, and we will follow up. Thank you, Mr. McDonough. Good luck on the confirmation.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Cassidy.
McDonough, see if I can get this thing. Hey, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I enjoyed our conversations. Thank you for the phone conversation. Some of this will be repeated just because I think it's so important for my colleagues. We spoke about how those of us in this committee will ask questions of the VA, but I use the term rope-a-dope, and you immediately got it. We get a reply back, which is off point about 2 months later. We ask for clarification. 2 months later, we get another slightly off point or more than off point. And then finally, it just kind of tapers out. And you have a different philosophy, so just do you mind sharing with us all how you intend to share data with us as regards the VA itself?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I think the free flow of accurate data is the lifeblood of a well-functioning organization. Consistent with that and consistent with the view I've been espousing of close collaborative consultative relationship with this committee and with the Congress, I would intend to make sure that we have the free flow of information between and among us. I also said when we talked earlier that it could be that because we're moving quickly, we provide inaccurate information, and I'll work to quickly come back with more accurate information on that. But as I said, the lifeblood of any well-functioning agency or organization is accurate, timely data.
You know, you used a couple of adjectives there. I'm going to explore them with you because I loved them, but I just want to quickly and timely.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which is not really, now the VA, by the way, has got me recently to answer the question very quickly. And so I'm saying that at times it works, at times it doesn't. But can you just give me a sense of when you say quickly and timely, like the time frames, that you would be considering quick and timely?
Well, it's hard to answer the question in the abstract, but I guess what I would say to that question, Senator, is I'd want it back to you in a time frame that's useful to you.
That works. Okay, thank you. Following up on something that Senator Brown said that Senator Murray alluded to, Senators Carper, Lankford, Tester, and I will soon be reintroducing the Protect Vets Act. Now, I don't expect you to be up to speed on this because you're just starting, but it seeks to close the 90-10 loophole to ensure that veterans' educational benefits, such as the GI Bill, are treated as federal funds for accountability purposes. And just kind of background, if a for-profit university is required to get 90%, is allowed to get 90% of its funds from the federal government and 10% from outside the federal government, veterans' benefits have been included in that 10%. And so when Senator Murray speaks of targeting veterans, yes, they've been targeted because they would fill up this gap that the free market wouldn't provide, but rather people with veterans' benefits could provide that 10% match for the remainder of the 90. We worked very hard to get a compromise that would protect the veteran, protect the good schools, and that would kind of be sensitive to sensibilities in both the Republican and the Democratic caucus. So, and again, protecting the good schools, but isolating out the bad. So just to say that we're going to be bringing this forward, knowing that you'll have to look at this, but we love your engagement on this issue because we think it's important that we address it.
I'd be happy to work with you on it, and I commit to being engaged if confirmed. Absolutely.
Yes, I appreciate that. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Cassidy. Remotely, Senator Hirono.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And welcome, Mr. McDonough. It was good to talk with you when I had the opportunity. I think my colleague Amy Klobuchar gave one of the best testimonies where she made it very clear that you listen and then you actually do something. You get things done. And you are about to head, should you be confirmed, one of the largest federal agencies and the largest healthcare system, and very uniquely, the VA actually provides healthcare across 50 states and territories. So this is a very unique agency with just ongoing challenges: homelessness, mental health, health disparity treatments, all kinds of things. So not to mention, by the way, when I talked with you, you said that from a very pragmatic standpoint, that getting the veterans vaccinated and dealing with the pandemic is one of your first priorities. So Joe Biden has said that he's going to have 100 million people vaccinated within the first 100 days. So should you be confirmed, do you have an idea of, or would you determine how many veterans you would want to get vaccinated, and would you have a way to determine whether you're actually meeting those goals? Would that be one of the ways that you will tackle this pandemic with regard to veterans?
Thank you, Senator. In fact, it would be that a principal priority in helping veterans through the pandemic is ensuring that they have access to care if sick and vaccinations to prevent getting sick. The way I intend to work this question is I will demand a seat at the table, and I will, as the President has asked me to do, be a staunch and fierce advocate for veterans getting access to the kind of care and the kind of resources that ensures that kind of outcome that you've just highlighted.
I think that you actually have to have numbers, such as you're going to have X percent of the veterans out there, and you're going to need to find some of them because they're not all in the system. And then you need to figure out a way to make sure that those vaccinations are actually occurring. One of the initial questions I ask of every nominee for these kinds of appointed positions, just to ensure their fitness to serve, I asked the following two questions, which I will now ask you. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, I have not.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, I have not.
One of the ways that we can really ensure that our veterans get the health care they need is to create community-based outpatient clinics. And I've talked with you about some of the long delays with regard to some of these clinics on Oahu as well as on some of the neighbor islands. And each one of these projects is unique. There may be some unique state requirements or limitations that make it really hard for these projects to proceed. So, it requires somebody within the VA to pay attention and move these projects along, whatever the specific concern might be, so that the veterans in these places are not waiting for a decade, as is the case with some of the projects in Hawaii. So I'd just like you to really focus on the need for community-based clinics where the veterans can have access to the care that they need. Will you commit to making that happen?
Senator, I will. If confirmed, I will.
So one of your predecessors made eliminating homelessness among veterans to be a top priority. And he engaged a whole of government kind of an approach, and yet homelessness continues to be a concern. And yes, you responded to my questions to you, but truly, what are you going to do that is different from what one of your predecessors who said, I am going to eliminate homelessness among veterans, and that didn't happen? What are you going to do to ensure that there will be more measurable success in eliminating homelessness among veterans?
Thank you, Senator. The President has made clear that this will be a priority of the administration. What I will do to implement that priority is obviously make it an intentional priority, one. Two, work with the other agencies in the federal government to increase access to available options. And three, make sure that the VA is providing access to all the other services that are important as it relates to access to mental health, access to substance use disorder treatment, access to education, employment, and training support, and using all of those tools, working with other federal agencies, and then holding ourselves to account to you to measure that progress is how we fulfill that objective.
I think you have a commitment from Sherrod Brown and from Marsha Fudge to enable you to succeed, and I will certainly be wanting to, engage with you on that score, because nothing could be as important as to have a roof over their head,
Amen.
as well as food and a job, if that's what's available to them, made available to them. I don't know. I can't see the timer, so my time is up.
You're over by about a minute and a half, and we
I'm
can
so
have
sorry.
a second round if you would like.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, Senator Ono. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is truly refreshing to see that we have a chairman and a ranking member who are both concerned about our rural veterans as well, and I thank you and I look forward to working with you. Mr. McDonough, first of all, I want to thank you for the phone call the other day. The opportunity to visit with you was good, and I appreciated the knowledge that you bring, your preparation for our visit, and your understanding of some of the challenges that the VA faces. I also, look, I plan on supporting you in your nomination for this position, and I thank you for your service to our country. Mr. McDonough, the Hot Springs VA facility in Hot Springs, South Dakota, is a critical part of the department's Black Hills healthcare system. In October, Secretary Wilkie rescinded a record of decision on the future of the campus, which provides vital healthcare services not only to South Dakotans, but to residents of Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, and so forth. I'd like your commitment, if confirmed, to work on moving the Hot Springs facility and literally the Black Hills of facilities themselves up into the century with regard to the services that they're providing, and literally to lay out a long-term plan for their success for the veterans in the rural areas.
Thanks, Senator. I really appreciated our conversation on this, and I committed to you then, and I recommit myself to you now to work closely with you on this and addressing the needs in the Hot Springs, in and around the Hot Springs facility, in as much as it is such a critical piece of the delivery capability, not only in South Dakota, but as you say, in Nebraska, Montana, Wyoming.
The Mission Act, which is what we operate under now for our health care, is an item that I didn't vote for. I didn't vote for it because it took away guarantees of a veteran to be able to find a physician of their own choice if they couldn't get an appointment within 30 days, or if they were more than 40 miles away from a healthcare facility that the VA sponsored. I thought they were making promises in the Mission Act that we might not be able to keep. I think you step into the administration of this facility, of this agency, this administration, in which you're being asked to do a lot of things and you're going to get pulled in a lot of different directions. I don't expect you to be able to see the detail of this chart, but this is a chart of the VA and what it has. You're expected to provide educational opportunities, you're expected to provide housing, you're expected to provide final expenses, a final resting place, and you're also expected to provide health care to VAs across the entire country. If you look at this, you can go down 13 levels before you actually get to where a real doctor is at or a hospital is at in the chart. And for me, that says a lot about the challenge that you face. I don't think that's something that a lot of people realize when they talk about the VA and what happens. When you promise everything to everybody and you lay it within an administration like this, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat administration, the challenges of handling a bureaucracy are huge. You walk into a bureaucracy with perhaps as many as 380,000 individuals, some of which are providing direct care, others of which are trying to find reasons why the care can't be provided. Specifically, what my concern is this. Right now, in the approval process, when we ask for someone to participate in the care for the community, it's not veteran-friendly. Too many of the approvals are made by people who work to make sure that the veteran stays within the VA system, regardless of whether or not it's good for the veteran or not. And while the flow chart says that the veteran's decision is the veteran's decision, as Senator Moran suggested, it always comes back to the VA for approval. In my opinion, it is tailored for an urban veteran with easy access to tertiary services and not the rural veteran who may have to drive well over 50 miles for access to see a primary care provider. If confirmed, what will you do to afford veterans their choices as to where they receive their health care?
Thank you, Senator. And I really appreciated our conversation before on these questions as well. Any credible strategy as it relates to rural care for our vets has to have at least three components. One, community care, and community care has to ensure that more timely payment of bills. It also has to ensure a more vibrant network of providers, providers who want to be part of that network. And I think in both of those cases, a more active or a higher set of expectations for the third-party administrator, for example, is probably wise. The second thing is using access to new platforms. We had a very useful conversation, I thought, about telehealth, as I did with several other members of the committee, consolidating those gains and growing those. And then third is getting more aggressive about using the authorities that you have given the department to recruit and to fill the vacancies in the facilities that VA already has. And so among those three prongs of a strategy, I think are the answers to ensure that the best medical outcome for the vet, which as I read the statute is what you all have demanded, ends up being the deciding variable in the equation.
my time has more than expired, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your thoughts, and particularly the one about timely payments for those providers.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having the hearing. Thank you, Mr. McDonough, for your service, your very extensive service, your commitment to veterans, your conversation with me about your dedication to them, and your testimony here today, which has been excellent. I've been following it from afar, and apologize I wasn't here before now. I want to, first of all, follow up on a part of the conversation we had about the VA facility in West Haven where there were 2 deaths. It's a aging, in fact, aged facility that is badly in need of reconstruction. Like many facilities across the country, it was built in another century, literally. And we owe it to our veterans to rebuild that infrastructure. There are several critical construction projects in the design phase at the West Haven VA, including a new sterile processing service building and surgical and clinical space tower. But what's really needed is a reconstruction of the entire facility, which does great care for our veterans. The doctors, nurses, administrative staff are superlative, and they're really dedicated patriots, but they're working with a structure, bricks and mortar, that fails to keep faith with our veterans. So I would like your commitment to work with this committee and ensure that the VA prioritizes infrastructure rebuilding, and most especially, obviously, for the interests of our Connecticut veterans, the facility in West Haven.
Thanks, Senator. And my commitment, my recommitment now, as it was in our earlier conversation, is to really dig in on these questions upon confirmation, to keep a very close collaborative relationship with you on it, to ensure that it's proceeding consistent with the needs of our vets and consistent with the 2 principles that I've laid out, which is increasing access for vets and improving outcome for vets.
And I'd like to invite you to West Haven, as I did privately, to come visit. They are doing a great job there, by the way, on vaccines. And I have visited the clinic where they're administering vaccinations. They are increasing the number.
Right.
I'd like to know from you how you will ensure that there's adequate access to vaccinations by minority veterans, communities of Black and brown veterans, and staff members in that category.
So I thank you very much, Senator. The President has made clear that equity will be a fundamental consideration across the pandemic preparedness and response. And it would be my expectation, if confirmed, that I will assume my seat at that table in those deliberations, and I will be the fierce, staunch advocate for all vets to have access to care and treatment and vaccines consistent with the improved access and the improved outcomes that will drive any decision I make as Secretary, if confirmed.
You are familiar, no doubt, with the reports about the numbers of veterans who were involved in the assault on the Capitol, which reflects a phenomenon that probably is no news to a lot of folks, that white supremacists, extremist ideology are often find fertile ground among veterans, just as they do in the general population, regretfully, tragically, and unnecessarily. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how, under your leadership, you will take steps to educate veterans about online disinformation and coordinate with other agencies like the Department of Defense in this effort.
Thank you, Senator. I'd just say I was struck by the activity, the actions that you and your colleagues took the evening of January 6th, reconvening to continue the democratic process. I thought that was a very strong statement. I'm also struck that both throughout that day and in the days hence, there were remarkable stories of veterans associated with the Washington, D.C. police force, Capitol Police Force, members, veterans who are members themselves, all taking valiant action to defend democracy. A continuation, as we've said throughout the day, of how veterans continue to serve outside of uniform. On the question of the threat of mis and disinformation, it's as important an assignment to protect our democracy as any. I could see a variety of opportunities for the VA to be an important actor in those efforts to protect vets, to highlight the threats of online activity, trying to provide or insert disinformation. And it'd be my intention to work with my interagency colleagues, the NSC and others, to make sure that that's receiving appropriate consideration.
Thank you. My time has expired, but I want to congratulate and thank you again, and I will very enthusiastically support your nomination on the condition that you come to Connecticut and visit us there.
I'll be happy to go to Connecticut. Thank you,
Thank
Senator.
you.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McDonough, congratulations to you and your family, and thank you for years of service, including a lot up here on Capitol Hill. First, I want to apologize for our not being able to talk before the hearing. I think you did have an opportunity to speak with everyone else, and I'd like to get your commitment between now and the time we report you out of committee to go in, maybe have a discussion so that we can drill down on some issues that can't be covered in 5 minutes. So thank you. I think in your testimony, you made reference to rebuilding trust in the VA, and I think that always we have to, we take steps forward, we take steps back, and we've always got to make sure that we have the trust of our veterans. Just wanted to note that I think we're at about 80% in trust of the VA overall, and about 90% on outpatient health care, so it seems like we're doing something right. One of the things I'd be curious if you're confirmed is if the metrics that we're using right now to measure our progress are appropriate, and then if you deem them appropriate, then continue to commit to reporting back so that we can see the trend lines move in the right direction. If you don't think they're appropriate, then make suggestions on things that we can better tailor to make sure that we're doing the best for our veterans. So I suspect that when you get into this role, and some questions have already been asked. The question of your not being a veteran, I'm not a veteran, I'm surrounded, I think there are some here who have not also served, but can you talk a little bit about the experience that you bring and why you think it makes you well-suited to take on the role of Secretary of the VA?
Yeah, thank you very much, Senator. One, I'm a fighter and I'm relentless. I think anybody you talk to who's worked with me will affirm that. Those attributes will serve me well to fulfill the fundamental assignment the President asked me to carry out, which is to be a fierce and staunch advocate for our veterans. Two, I know and understand the federal government from both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. I can unstick problems inside agencies and across agencies, and especially an agency as large as VA, that's an important skill, and in fact, I've spent a lot of time working with many members of this committee on doing just that. And then there's something more. going back to those attacks on 9/11 for 20 years, I've been afforded in my public service something relatively few Americans are granted, which is to see up close the excellence, the execution, the talent of our armed forces. And I've been deeply moved by that. And I've also seen in trips into the field in Iraq and Afghanistan on a very regular basis the impact of our troops and the impact of long deployments on them and their families. And I've made it a point to visit at Walter Reed and to even be at Dover on the final arrival home for some of our heroes. And I'm not telling you that I'm a vet, but I'm telling you that I have come to understand the massive sacrifices that they've made, and I've come to witness the amazing skill with which they've done it. And there is no higher calling than to use my skills to ensure that we make good on our promises to them, to serve them as well as they've served us.
Well, thank you. I'm going to try and keep to time for my other colleagues who have yet to speak, but I actually wanted to thank the chairman for the past, gosh, I don't know, John, going back 4 years with Chairman Isaacson's approval. He and I have met with 2 secretaries to track on some of the transformation efforts, the electronic health record system, which is something I want to continue to be focused on. I'm hoping the chair, now that you're in that lofty role of chair, you may want to have somebody else on the committee meet with them. But to meet with you all on a regular basis, I really believe in the electronic health record implementation. I think the integration with the DOD, I think some other member may have alluded to it, is critical to provide that seamless transition. There are some other transformation projects that I'm very interested in. I also, when we have a follow-up discussion, want to talk about the concept of rebalancing community care, what that would really mean. And I look forward to setting up a phone call or in-person visit over the next few days. Thank you all again. Congratulations to your family. And did you say you came from a family of 10 kids?
Yeah, 11. So I have 10 brothers and sisters.
11.
Yeah.
Were you an altar boy?
I was.
Yeah, one of the best jobs I ever had.
Yeah, there's a nice honoraria every once in a while.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tillerson, and we will continue to work on EHR. Thank you. Next, we have up Senator Bernie Sanders remotely.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And Dennis, great to see you again.
Nice to see you, Senator.
I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to chat before the hearing, but I am more than aware of your years of public service, and I have absolute confidence that your knowledge of the bureaucracy is exactly what we need to head up the VA and make that important institution as efficient and useful to our veterans as it can be. So I look forward to working with you. And if it's okay with you, let's see if we can chat a little bit in the next couple of days. Is that something we could do?
Very much, yes, I'd very much appreciate that.
Okay, and I also love to welcome you to come to Vermont and chat with some of the folks at our very good hospital in White River Junction. They would love to meet with you, and I think you can learn a little bit about the problems facing veterans care in rural America. Is that something you might be interested in?
I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to do that, absolutely.
Okay. A couple of the issues that I wanted to touch on, and I apologize, I was at another meeting, is the trend that we have seen in recent years toward privatization. In talking to veterans in Vermont, and as the former chair of the VA committee, talking to veterans all across this country, I find that veterans, by and large, with exception, feel that the quality of care that they're getting at the VA is very good. And they very much appreciate the level of staffing and people who often come from their backgrounds, many of them veterans themselves, who understand the particular problems that veterans face. Can you say a word about trying to maybe reverse the efforts toward privatization and adequately fund the VA so that veterans can get the quality care in a timely manner that they deserve?
Thank you, Senator. I've indicated that every decision that I make will flow from two principles, which is, does the decision increase access for veterans, and does it improve outcomes for veterans? And that, at the end of the day, has got to be the defining set of principles on every decision. I think as I've discussed with many members of the committee, I do not support privatization. I do recognize that community care will continue to be a part of how the VA provides care to veterans. So we have to ensure that community care, that VA is being a good partner in community care, timely paying of bills, maintaining an effective, vibrant network. At the same time, we have to ensure that this integrated health model continues to draw on the success and the excellence that is obvious throughout its workforce. So that's how I see this, Senator.
Good, good, and I would agree with you. I just wanted to touch on an issue which is of concern in Vermont, and I think nationally. When I look at healthcare, Dennis, I see dental care as an integral part of healthcare, and yet dental care is not available to the average veteran except when there is, when it's associated with an injury in service, service-related injury. Will you work with me in trying perhaps to expand dental care as a basic benefit for our veterans?
Thank you, Senator. I will absolutely dig into this question if confirmed and continue to work with you and other members of the committee in a consultative, collaborative way to try to address these concerns. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, that's all that I have. And I think we're looking at somebody who stands the chance of being a really, really great VA secretary, and I certainly look forward to working with him in the future. So thank you very much, Senator. Look forward to chatting with you shortly.
Thanks so much, Senator.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Sanders. Next, we have Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. McDonough, thanks for your conversation and meeting yesterday. As I mentioned, I'm proudly serving the state with more vets per capita than any state in the country. Joe, it's true, sorry. West Virginia's close, patriotic communities, both of ours. And I've reached out to a number of our veterans for questions that they can ask you, and I got a lot, of course. And I would say that you could boil them down to a couple things. They want a secretary who understands what it means to serve, who will vigorously tackle the benefit and healthcare challenges facing them, and who listens, who doesn't prioritize the needs of, say, a veteran in Los Angeles or a big city over the needs of those in rural communities like Utiavik or Kotzebue, who works with Congress on finding solutions, not politicizing, and in the spirit of a great Marine, former constituent of mine, unfortunately we lost him last year, Marine Gunnery Sergeant Cajun Bob Toms from Wasilla, Alaska, 6 Purple Hearts on the cover of Life magazine for his Silver Star valiant heroic efforts during Vietnam. In the confirmation of Secretary Shulkin, he had asked a question of saying he simply wants a VA secretary who, quote, will kick ass and take names. So, what do you say to my veterans on these issues? And can you take a minute, I know you do with Senator Tillis, to speak directly to the legitimate concerns that Alaska veterans have raised who feel as though military experience is the prerequisite for the VA secretary to understand and have a baseline understanding of their needs, their service, their experience. So if you can address all of those, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator, and I appreciate the question, and I appreciate the concern at the heart of the question about who's best prepared to be VA secretary. I'm not a gunnery sergeant, but I'm a fighter and I'm relentless. Anybody who's worked with me knows that. 2, I know how the government works, and importantly, I know when and how it doesn't work. And I will fight relentlessly to ensure that it works for our vets.
So I think my constituents, my veterans, their families, they want to know, will you have their back?
I've spent the last 20 years involved in decisions about when and where, as a staff person, I'm not going to overstate my role, but as a staff person, when and where our men and women go to fight. And I've gone and seen and met and witnessed what they're doing. And I've gone to visit them when they're injured here at home. And I have seen and internalized their excellence. And I know that the basic requirement of a VA secretary is to have their back to ensure that I will fight like hell to take as good a care of them as they've taken of us.
So in the immortal words of Cajun Bob, you will
kick ass and
kick ass and take names on behalf of our veterans?
Yes, sir.
That's important. They need to know it.
Yes, sir.
I also want to get your commitment, first year of your tenure, to get up to Alaska, meet with my veterans, see our state, see the challenges. Can I get your commitment on that?
You've got that commitment.
Can I get your commitment? You know, if confirmed, you're going to be running a big bureaucracy. Can I get your commitment to kind of do a VFR direct with all of us on this committee? When we have issues, we can go directly to you, not through the 18 layers of bureaucracy to...
Yes, you have that commitment.
Let me ask one final question. Again, these were concerns from my veterans. You served in the Obama administration. My first 2 years in the Senate were the last 2 years of the Obama administration. A lot of the issues I was dealing with were some of the big VA problems. The choice program, which in my state, the implementation was an utter disaster. It actually collapsed the system in Alaska. I mean, total disaster. The Phoenix wait time scandal. What did you learn from these? And do you think that experience is going to help you? Is that a liability given your background? And can you assure my veterans that we're not going to go back to those days, which I don't think anyone on this committee thinks were good days for our veterans? We've made a lot of progress since that, and we've made a lot of progress back home in Alaska, particularly as it relates to putting together an Alaska plan that got us out of the hole the choice program put us in.
Thank you, Senator. The lifeblood of well-run, well-functioning organization or agency is timely, accurate information. That was not the case in Phoenix. The lifeblood of a well-run organization is accountability. Accountability happened in Phoenix, but it was slow. You all have subsequently changed the statute to make that easier, and it won't ever happen again. At the end of the day, the principle that will inform my leadership of the VA, if I'm confirmed, is whether any decision increases access and improves outcomes for our vets. That is what we owe the vets. That is what my commitment to you, to the VSOs, and to them, and to the President, is that I will deliver if confirmed as Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Senator Joe Manchin III.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your lofty position. First of all, Mr. McDonough, thank you very much. And if I may say, Dennis, we've known each other for a while. And I'm glad that my colleagues brought up about, sometimes they think we need to be veterans, and I never had the honor and the pleasure of being able to be a veteran. I think that's a void in my life. I think back, I was an altar boy for 12 years. I was a Boy Scout for a long time, never made it to the military. And that's something I really think there's a void, and I think it's a special opportunity. But we know that it takes a person who cares and has the experience to do the job, and that's where you come in. And I think, Dennis, that it says everything. Let me tell you a little bit of what you're facing and what I faced in 5 years I've been on this committee. I came on this committee in the 114th Congress in 2015. Since then, they've talked about the wait time scandals. That led to the VA Choice Act. That led to the Mission Act, which needs a lot of repairs, as you know. The veterans' unemployment and hiring. After the financial crisis, we had more veterans unemployed. Took longer to get them back employed. We had we started I Hire a Vet, a campaign all over the country. Toxic exposure, Agent Orange, burn pits. I know you're very much aware of those, and it's really wreaking havoc today. The veteran suicide and mental health that we deal with on a daily basis. Veterans homelessness is something that I can't comprehend at all, how we can have any veterans that we wouldn't have better care for. The women veterans health care access, women think they've been left out or not a high priority, and they're an integral part of our military and our defense today. The hiring backlog, over 40,000 vacancies in the VA. Veterans Affairs IT infrastructure delay. Clarksburg VA murders. If anything I've ever experienced in my life is knowing that we could have veterans who were murdered in a veterans hospital. And we have 8 confirmed, a woman that will be serving many life sentences over and over. And there might be as many as 3 more. We've had sexual abuse just found in another Beckley VA hospital. 4 veterans we know of, and probably 40 more over a 25-year span. There's a breakdown somewhere, sir, and we're just going to need someone like you who can dig into that, because to me it would be vetting. We're not vetting people properly. We're not having strict rules adhered to. But more importantly, we passed in 2017 the Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act. We wanted to make sure that we could basically get rid of the people that weren't doing their job. I don't think that that's been exercised much since then. And I'll give you a perfect example. The people that I hold responsible for the VA hospital deaths in Clarksburg have been moved to other places in the VA system. Unheard of. And I knew way back when this happened, in meeting with them, that someone was either lying to me or totally incompetent. And now when I found out, we brought new leadership in, they were moved somewhere. I can't find them. And I'd like to know on that, if you could bring that to highest priority. I think to put the credibility back in the VA, the care and the desire for the care that they deserve, I would ask you as one of your first visits to come to Clarksburg VA and set down what your mission would be. And I think, sir, that could set the tone for the entire VA system all over the country. It's just unbelievable, totally unbelievable. And now I have families calling me daily, did my father or grandfather lose their life because someone murdered them when they were there? Still not knowing for sure. These are all the things that we're dealing with today. You can help ease that pain, I think. But Dennis, I look forward to you. We need someone of your ability more now than ever. And like I said, I'm in awe today of every person I see in uniform, all the people you see out here guarding this great republic of ours, and anybody who has served to give them the greatest care. So with that, I know the challenges are great. If you'd like to comment on any of that, I know you've probably been following some of this, but I don't know to what extent on that.
Well, I thank you very much, Senator, and I have been following it, and we had a very good conversation, which I appreciated.
Thank you for that.
And my commitment is, as I assured you before, which is to work in close consultation and collaboratively with you and with the rest of the members of the committee on these questions.
I think you're going to find a committee that's worked in, I'm just about finished, a committee that's worked in the most bipartisan way. Now, I've said this before, and I mean it with all my heart. Men and women in uniform are the glue of this country. They keep us together. They keep us talking. They keep us finding ways to work together to make sure that we're taking care of those who are taking care of us. So you've got it in your hands now, the cradle, basically, of the people who've made the country what we are today. And we owe it to them. So with that being said, you're going to find all the support. If we don't have a piece of legislation that allows you to reorganize, that allows you to basically get rid of the dead wood and the people who don't care, my grandmother always said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I know how much you care. Now you have to show the rest of the world.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I look forward to voting for you, too.
Thank you.
Count me in.
Thank
Coach.
you.
Put me in a game, Coach.
You got it, big boy. Thank you, Senator Manchin. Remotely, we have Senator Blackburn.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And Mr. McDonough, thank you so much for the time this week. It was wonderful to visit with you by phone. Let me just, and I appreciate your commitment. You've talked some about your passion and that relentless commitment to doing the job and to public service. So very quickly, what would uniquely qualify you to lead the VA with a budget that is nearly $250 billion and 400,000 employees, and it serves 9 million enrolled veterans? So kind of following on to Senator Manchin's question, what is your unique qualification?
Thank you, Senator. As you've indicated, I am a fighter and I'm relentless, and that means I will fight to get our vets back, and I will ensure relentlessly that the resources that you've authorized and appropriated for the committee are invested wisely and with the veteran at the center of those investments. I also understand how the government works from both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. That means demanding excellence. That means enforcing accountability. That means being in close collaboration and consultation with you and other members of this committee to ensure that we're using all the available power of the U.S. government to get our vets back. Lastly, for 20 years now, I've been involved in these decisions about when and where to send our men and women to war. Not as a decider, I'm not trying to overstate my role, but as a staff person. And I've also seen the excellence of our military, and I've seen the challenges of long deployments, and I've seen the sacrifices, but I've seen the resilience, and there is no higher calling than to be able to use my skills and my experience to repay and to ensure that we live up to the promises we've made to our vets.
Yeah, let me jump in there because Senator Moran and others have talked about community care, and you and I talked a little bit about this. You've got choice, you've got mission. We've got, as part of repaying these veterans, many that want to get care in their communities. You talked about the right balance of care. And I would like for you to bring just a little bit of clarity to that. What do you see as the right balance of care? And would you commit that you're not going to roll back on standards and reverse the intent of a veteran-centric care and addressing the whole health of the veteran?
Thank you, Senator. The community care will continue to be a fundamental way that the department provides care to our veterans. Okay. 1. 2, the statute is clear on this. It says that best medical outcome for the veteran is the objective. And that will continue to be my priority if confirmed as secretary. 3rd, every decision I make as secretary will come back to this principle, which is it increasing access for veterans and is it improving outcomes for veterans? If the answer to those questions are no, then we won't do it.
Okay, well, and you and I discussed the health records, the electronic health records,
ma'am.
and others have brought that up today. And you know, my frustration with a $4 billion IT budget, and they can't seem to get it right. And indeed, Senator Tester and I had legislation this year that would have improved the management of that. And for the record, we're about out of time. I'll send you QFR on the management of those programs. And then you and I also discussed purchasing. And for the record, I will send you a question delving a little bit more into that purchasing. But thank you for the time today. Thank you for your commitment. And Mr. Chairman, I'll send the time back to you.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Next we have remotely Senator Sinema.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Mr. McDonough joining us today. My office is increasingly hearing from Arizona veterans asking for clarification on how to receive the COVID vaccine from the VA and when they'll be able to receive it. My staff has been working locally to make sure information is getting out to the community, and this highlights the importance of having Senate-confirmed leadership at the Department of Veterans Affairs as quickly as possible. I've introduced with Senator Tillis the Ensuring Survivor Benefits During COVID legislation to address concerns that survivors of veterans who died from COVID may not be granted their earned benefits if the death certificate only identifies COVID-19 as a cause of death without considering the impact of other service-connected illnesses. If confirmed, will you work with me to ensure that processes are in place to address these concerns?
Yes, Senator, I will.
Thank you. Over the last year, my office has worked with the VA, American Legion, and Philips North America to bring an Atlas site to Arizona. We hope to provide more details about that site in the coming weeks. The Atlas, or the Accessing Telehealth Through Local Area Stations program, is part of VA's Anywhere to Anywhere telehealth initiative to bring a VA telehealth access point to underserved communities. In Arizona, there may be many rural and tribal communities that could benefit from this and other telehealth initiatives. If confirmed, will you continue to work with our office to expand telehealth opportunities to rural and tribal communities?
Yes, I will.
As we consider expansion, we have to acknowledge the challenges of access to broadband in these communities. As the VA continues to expand its telehealth initiatives, what role do you feel the VA should play in addressing broadband access?
Thanks, Senator. I think the VA has a key role to play in coordinating with other federal agencies and with the FCC to ensure that the kinds of access questions that VA can lead on, including on telehealth, can be expanded by better broadband access, more universally available. So I think there's a critical role to play within the interagency, and that, if confirmed, would be precisely what I intend to do.
Thank you. You know, in Arizona, the Navajo Nation has been hit particularly hard by COVID. The CDC notes that Native Americans are at a disproportionate risk for complications from COVID due to health and socioeconomic disparities in these communities. They also experience other inequities such as high instances of homelessness and challenges accessing clean drinking water and sanitation. If confirmed, what steps will you take to ensure the VA is best serving Native American veterans?
This would be a fundamental priority consistent with the President's stated priorities on equity and stated consistent with what I have said throughout the day today, which is how are we increasing access and improving outcomes for all vets? And third, consistent with the direction to me from the President to ensure that VA is welcoming of all veterans, including, obviously, Navajo and other Native American veterans. So there's a fundamental role for us, for the VA to play there, and if confirmed, I would intend to play that role.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Information technology modernization has been and continues to be a central focus for the VA. If confirmed, you'll be responsible for overseeing these major modernization efforts. As cybersecurity threats continue to increase across the U.S., what steps will you take to ensure the VA is equipped to protect against cyber threats and is practicing good cyber hygiene?
Thank you, Senator. Obviously, cyber, the range of cyber threats that we confront as a country is only growing. having cybersecurity, cyber hygiene front and center, not only for the major programmatic efforts at the department, but also for individuals in the workforce at the department will have to be a fundamental priority for the next secretary. And if that's me, I would intend to make that cybersecurity a key priority.
Thanks. You know, the VA still has a number of legacy systems it's supporting. These can not only be costly, but also generally do not follow or accommodate today's security best practices.
Right.
What would be your approach to addressing legacy systems if confirmed as VA Secretary?
Thank you, Senator. Obviously, there has to be a fundamental focus on cybersecurity and cyber hygiene across the enterprise, one. And then two is effectively performing on the modernization efforts will allow VA to not only increase security and increase performance and outcomes for vets, but will also reduce costs over time of these legacy systems. So executing on the modernization has to be a key priority.
And I see that my time has expired. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I will submit the rest of my questions for our nominee, and I want to thank him for joining us here today.
Thank you, Senator Sinema. And in that regard, the questions need to be in by tomorrow at 5 p.m. Last but certainly not least, and I've been in your position before, Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. McDonough. And I don't mind, frankly. It means that I don't have to ask Dennis about rural veterans, Native American veterans, telehealth, COVID-19 Mission Act, or community care network. So we can get right down to the business of Clemens Stadium, Johnny's football, and Jay Christensen Stadium versus the Cobbers. How about that?
I like that.
All right. Well, we'll get to that on your way to Alaska when you stop in Fargo, okay? But you and I did have a wonderful discussion. I want to tell you how much I appreciated the meeting we had earlier this week. We did drill down on a number of these issues, as well as one of my most important issues that's probably a little more unique to me, and that is, of course, the use of alternative forms of therapies, treatments, particularly hyperbaric oxygen treatment. And the reason I'm such a proponent of hyperbaric oxygen treatment for and therapies for veterans is because I've seen it work so well. A number of veterans that I know have really had their lives changed and in some cases saved by this important therapy, as well as others who've had injuries that come from sports, particularly head trauma, traumatic brain injuries, and so I am a strong proponent of it, and I want you to know, and I, by the way, very much appreciated your dialogue with Senator Moran, because he was getting to the heart of an issue that I think a lot of us, as you could probably tell, are challenged by, and that is just how large the bureaucracy is and how difficult it can be to maneuver it, and how often we'll actually pass legislation that's signed into law only to have it sort of either slow-walked or whether intentionally or unintentionally. And I happen to believe that most of the time it's with good intentions. But with regard to HBOT, I was able to get language in the John Scott legislation that you're very familiar with that would authorize the Secretary of the VA to enter into public-private partnerships to research the effectiveness of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And it would require, and I stress require, the VA to use an objective test to measure the effectiveness of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And it would commission a comprehensive review and study of HBOT, both within the VA and I think importantly with outside organizations as well, because there's just a lot of experience out there that to this point hasn't been brought, in my view, into a good peer-reviewed objective study. But it would be completed with a recommendation then from the VA about the effectiveness of HBOT. I stress that because that is language in the bill that makes it law. And I believe there are, as I said, real benefits to this innovative therapy. And by the way, other innovative therapies. And I think you and I talked about the important role the VA has played, leadership role it's played in some of very effective alternatives to traditional medicine or in addition to traditional medicine. But I really want to just, I guess, again, thank you for listening and get a reaffirmation of your commitment to fulfill both the letter of that law and then the spirit of it, and then accept my invitation to Fargo on your way to Alaska to see Dan Sullivan.
anytime I can go to Fargo, I'll take it. One. Two is I'd be happy to recommit to making sure that we dig into the analysis of the therapy consistent with the intent in the statute and consistent with getting to the brass tack here to find out what's the best way and best vehicles to deliver the kind of care to our vets that they've earned.
I appreciate that. I've written down a number of the things you've said in quotes. I won't repeat all of them, but one thing you've said a couple of times in response to the question about your cred, if you will, your street cred for this job, and I love that when you say, I know how government works. I think that's oftentimes a or underappreciated skill set and gift and experience. So I believe you when you say that. You have every reason to know how government works. As you said, you've seen it from both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, and count me as an affirmative vote.
Thank you.
And someone who looks forward to working with you once you are confirmed. And
Thanks
with
so
that, I
much,
yield
Senator.
the rest of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Kramer. Before I have my closing remarks, I will turn it over to the ranking member, Senator Moran.
Chairman Tester, thank you very much. It was tolerable to have you in the chair today, and it's not exactly what I wanted, but it's not a bad deal either. So thank you for working with me and my colleagues on this side of the aisle as we commit to do to you and your colleagues. And Mr. McDonough, before I ask you a question, I wanted to point out to the committee that we have a new staff director now on the minority side, who came from the House minority side, but was in both the minority and majority staff world in the Senate, and is returning now to the Senate. This is his first meeting since his arrival, and John Towers is behind me, and we look forward to having him and his help, and we make him available to you, Mr.
Great.
McDonough, should you be confirmed.
Thank you.
Mr. McDonough, would you commit to me that you're a fan of the Chiefs?
Senator Moran, I'm a big fan of Patrick Mahomes. But I'm a Vikings fan, and I hate to admit that I'm kind of old school that way. So,
Well, you could have answered the question in a worse way. Mr. McDonough, I thank you for your interest in serving as the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I thank you for your testimony today. I just wanted you to know, based upon what you have said and what I have learned about you, that I will vote for your confirmation.
Thank you.
And I will ask my Republican colleagues to do the same. And I look forward to working with you, and your commitment is evident to me. And I think we can accomplish a lot on behalf of those who served our nation working together. So best wishes to you and your family, and I thank them. I know your wife in particular is involved in veterans services, and I would express my gratitude as I did personally to her, but here publicly for her efforts. And so as a family, we wish you all well in this new endeavor. And,
thank you very much.
I'm grateful for your service. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Senator Moran, Mr. McDonough, I don't know if Moran had that question that he asked you and knew the real impact of it, but not only is Jerry Moran a Chiefs fan, but my committee director is also a Chiefs fan. So, you know, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if you're a Vikings fan as long as you root for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That's all. Okay. I also want to welcome John Towers. John is somebody that both Jerry and I had the opportunity to work with when he was in the House. And as you well know, Dennis, oftentimes the relationship between the principals is important, but the relationship between the staff is more important.
Here, here.
And so I want to welcome you on board, John. And I also want to thank your wife and your family that have sat attentively behind you, nodding their heads and paying attention, and I can't see their eyes, so I don't think they nodded off very often anyway. But the truth is we all know that the power and the ability for any of us to serve in any of these positions, whether it's elected or staff, really relies with the family and how important they are to our ability to do our job. And I want to thank our committee today for their thoughtful questions and their their belief and the way they put across the fact that veterans are number one in this committee, and that's why we work on this committee so well. You know, I looked at the FBI report day before yesterday, and I think Senator Moran's going to do it tomorrow. And I don't think I'm out of school by saying that it was pretty darn stellar. In fact, I told the lady that brought it in I would have to pay a lot of money to get this many recommendations of what a fine fellow I am. And so you are a highly qualified candidate, and I believe that you will work with this committee to ensure that we keep the promises to the men and women who have served their country and their families too, by the way. And Senator Moran visited, and we have an agreement that we plan to meet again on Tuesday to vote on Denis McDonough's nomination to be Secretary of the Veterans Affairs, as well as the committee rules and the budget. And that's what we're going to do. I think the fact that you had not met with Senator Tillis or Senator Sanders yet, and the fact that the ranking member had not seen the FBI report requires us to do it then. Otherwise, I would have tried to move it up, but I'm not going to based on that. I would ask, as I pointed out to Senator Sinema, that any post-hearing questions be sent to the clerk by tomorrow at 5 p.m. And then we will need those responses back from you before we vote on Tuesday. With that, once again, I want to thank you and your family for being here. Always a pleasure to work with Senator Moran. This hearing is adjourned.